Our third talk of the scientific session is by Professor Tejinder Singh on the role of bone marrow immunohistochemistry in the diagnosis of acute leukemia. The chairpersons for this session are Professor Devdatta Basu and Dr. Anup Srivastava. I would like to invite Professor Singh to start the session and Professor Basu and Dr. Srivastava to chair the session. Thank you.
Now, what is acute leukemia? This is what the typical picture in the peripheral blood is: blast cells in the peripheral blood, which may or may not be present depending upon whether it is aleukemic, subleukemic, leukemia. So what happens is these leukemic blast cells, they replace the normal marrow. Not only that, there is organ infiltration into various other organs, including lymph nodes and spleen. And these are partly differentiated or undifferentiated blast cells. So how do we diagnose them? First is peripheral smear and bone marrow aspirate. Okay, all of you are doing that. Cytochemistry is the next thing, which gives us a broad idea whether we are dealing with AML and ALL. And this is essential for the clinician to start the chemotherapy. Then we do the immunophenotyping by two methods. One is flow, and the second is by immunohistochemistry, which flow all of you may not be doing, but immunohistochemistry, majority of the centers in this country are doing now immunohistochemistry. Then cytogenetics and molecular to find the molecular abnormality. And lastly, minimal residual disease. That is how we nowadays proceed with any case of acute leukemia. So what is the role of immunophenotyping? Number one is to distinguish between AML and ALL. That is the most important thing, because one arises from the lymphoid stem cell, the other one from the myeloid stem cells. Then in ALL, whether it is B type or T type, to differentiate in CML blast crisis, whether it is a myeloid type or a lymphoid type. Now we know that immunophenotyping is essential because we are slowly getting drugs which have a target. So depending on, like rituximab we have now, which is effective against CD20 positive cells, and therefore very, very useful in non-Hodgkin's lymphomas. And then once you diagnose that it is M4-EO, you have diagnosed as M4 with eosinophilia, then the choice gets limited. Then what you have to do is inversion 16 or translocation 16. So for molecular and cytogenetic, it gives a guide. So you can do by immunohistochemistry or by trephine biopsy. Now this is the WHO classification of precursor B cell neoplasm. And here we have precursor T cell neoplasm. Now WHO has very nicely classified that the ones which arise from the mature B cells are basically, majority of them are lymphomas. And those arising from the lymphoblasts are the B precursor lymphoblastic leukemia or precursor T lymphoblastic leukemia. Similarly, for AML, we have this recurrent cytogenetic abnormalities, a big group. And then we have AML NOS, not otherwise categorized, which is basically based on FAB classification. So the first thing is morphology. Here it is ALL, on this side is the AML. What you find is the chromatin is more open than in a case of ALL. Nucleoli are more prominent in AML than in ALL, but these are broad features. What is more important is cytochemistry. And of the cytochemistry, the most important stain is MPO, myeloperoxidase. By and large, all AMLs, by and large, are MPO positive. Sudan black B positivity goes hand in hand, except for the fact that 1 to 3% of the ALLs, though they are ALL, yet they show Sudan black positivity, but are MPO negative. So MPO is the basic stain which we need to do. Non-specific esterase we do for monocytic differentiation. Again, on morphology you can make out that it is monocytic differentiation, but you need for confirmation non-specific esterase. Earlier we used to do double esterase, not done much. Pass stain does not help much except in ALL where block positivity comes. And now in M6, or what we call as pure erythroid leukemia, where it is really useful. Acid phosphatase, from the time immunophenotyping has come, acid phosphatase has almost been completely stopped in various centers. To just give you a glimpse how useful these cytochemical stains are, MPO positive, you find these OROD positive, and then you find positivity in the blast cells, confirms by and large AML. 85 to 90% of the acute leukemias can be diagnosed if they are MPO positive or negative. Sudan black positivity, it is positive in most of the AMLs and L3. What happens in L3 is that those Burkitt cells, you find the vacuoles are Sudan black B positive. This is the big blobs of pinkish material, that is the block positivity, more so in L1 than in L2. Acid phosphatase, orange colored polar deposit, more suggestive of PALL, and double esterase. The orange ones are the monocytic and the blue ones are the myeloid. So myelomonocytic leukemia, what we used to do double esterase was in M4, myelomonocytic leukemia, especially in M4 with eosinophilia. So what is the idea of doing immunophenotyping? First is the lineage, myeloid or lymphoid, B or T. And then there are few cases which turn out to be biphenotypic. Not rare, but you come across. And then the aberrant expression. Aberrant expression means it is AML. But then one or two other markers, CD2 may come out to be positive in cells. Or it is a lymphoid, but you find CD33 may come out positive in few cells. So that is the aberrant expression. Now it has a great role now. As we go for minimal residual disease, and we know that this is an aberrant expression ALL or AML. Now you are looking for the same aberrant expression in the residual cells. If it is so, we know that these are the leukemic cells which are persisting. So that is where the role of minimal residual disease by flow cytometry comes. All of us, by and large, diagnose acute leukemias by flow cytometry. For obvious reasons, number one, we count high number of cells, and that is where the machine helps. You don't have to do anything, just press 2 or 3 computer things and every data comes in front of you. Then expression of several antigens for an individual cell. Now this is the biggest advantage of flow, which we don't have on immunohistochemistry. We have to do separate stain for CD3, another stain for CD2, another section for CD20, like that. But here, the same cells, you can see the expression, which one is expressing, which one is not, and then assess the lineage assignment and aberrant phenotype. But what happens to flow? Some cases you find that flow cytometry does not help. Why does not help? Number one, proportion of leukemic cells is too low. That means your patient came with a leukemic leukemia, you have done a bone marrow aspirate, that is also diluted, showing peripheral blood, leukemic cells are not enough. You can't do flow. So what do you do now? Then paucicellular diagnosis. Cells are very, very few. Now what happens when the leukemic cells are low? It may be hypoplastic leukemia, or it may be subleukemic leukemia. Or what happens is, there is an extensive marrow fibrosis where the leukemic cells are trapped and they are not aspirable. Since they are not aspirable, so the clinician keeps on saying, patient has pancytopenia, thrombocytopenia, yet we are not able to give a diagnosis because the flow is not coming out properly because of the inadequate number of cells. or there is a marrow necrosis. You have put in a needle and what you find is nothing is coming, or some necrotic material if you have made the smears. So these are the, or extreme hypercellularity. That means when the cells are too many and too closely packed, they are again inaspirable. So the result is we can't tell the clinician it is acute leukemia. So what we have to do in such cases is, now these are the conditions where we face a problem. Extreme hypercellularity, densely packed marrow. Fibrosis of the marrow, you find the streaming of the cell because of increased reticulin. Leukemic cells are lying there, but are not aspirable. Greater the fibrosis, they become inaspirable. And then we have the marrow necrosis, where we may find few viable cells, but on aspirate we come across necrotic material, so flow cytometry is not possible. Then we resort to immunohistochemistry. So while doing a bone marrow, if you have done both aspirate and also you have done bone marrow trephine biopsy, that is where the biopsy comes, because now we have immunohistochemistry available. What are the advantages? Number one, architectural. We know that this is megakaryocyte, these are the leukemic cells, these are the erythroid cells. Low number of neoplastic cells can also be picked up by immunohistochemistry. And then it does not require fresh tissue. You have already made a block, and that paraffin block is good enough for multiple sections of the trephine biopsy to diagnose a case. Then there are certain markers like cyclin D1, BCL6, which come out far better on bone marrow trephine biopsy, immunohistochemistry, than on flow cytometry. Say for example, basics, one of the thing is leukocyte common antigen. Now leukocyte common antigen is strong in non-Hodgkin's lymphomas and it is weak in acute leukemias. And then we have certain markers of immaturity. These are the same markers which we use for flow as well as for immunohistochemistry, CD34, TDT, 117. Now these are three markers of immaturity. Immature cells, these will be positive. Mature cells of CLL, these will be totally negative. And then we have lineage specific markers. Like in flow also, when you do, we always want to assess whether it is B, T. So what we do is cytoplasmic CD3, cytoplasmic CD22 or cytoplasmic MPO for the lineage. Here also what we do is CD3 is a pan T cell marker which is positive both in T lymphocytes and T lymphoblasts. CD20, though not a B cell marker but very good for immunohistochemistry, but it is positive in mature B cells. CD22 is not expressed in early lymphoblasts. On the other hand, what we find is PAX5 CD79A. These are the two markers which come out positive for all stages of lymphoid series, especially the B, and therefore they are used to characterize the acute lymphoblastic leukemia. And finally, we have CD117, which is a specific marker for AML, immature cells. Now this is just to give you an idea how the various antigens appear on the lymphoblast and then they go on to mature B cells. Say for example TDT, CD34. Now these are present only in the blast cells. 19 not only in lymphoblasts but also in mature B cells. 79A similarly PAX5. So these are the three markers which are very, very useful. CD10 is very useful because it is basically seen mainly in the lymphoblast, except also in follicular lymphomas where we come across CD10. And then CD20 is a mature B cell marker, and so are the kappa, lambda and BCL6. Suppose we have a case of suspected ALL. Whenever there is a case of acute leukemia, we apply markers of ALL, AML, B-ALL and T-ALL at the same time. So we usually do it in stages. At the first stage, we just want to see that immaturity markers should be positive, like CD34, TDT, lineage marker like CD3, PAX5. That will give us an idea which series does it belong, and if the immaturity markers are positive, we know that it is likely to be acute leukemia. Once you know it is acute leukemia, so what we find in B-ALL is, main thing is that the myeloid markers are negative. That means CD117, MPO are negative. So what we have now is CD34 positive, TDT positive, 20 negative, except for the few cases where there may be some cells which may demonstrate CD20 positivity, but by and large CD20 negative. PAX5 is a nuclear marker, very good marker. So is the TDT. These two nuclear markers give us an idea. PAX5 for B cell series, and so is CD10. Now myeloid markers negative means CD117 negative, MPO negative. The few cells which you find are actually in this are the neutrophils, few metamyelocytes which are present in the marrow. They demonstrate the positivity. CD3 again few cells are positive. CD3, the T cells you will find in all acute leukemias in variable numbers, though the number is rather small. Then we go on to TALL. Here again, TDT is positive in about a good number, 90% of the cases of TALL. CD1A, CD2, and now we know that CD99. So CD99, CD1A, CD3, and the TDT. These are the four markers which we must carry out in each case of suspected TLL. Of course, the other one, it is the CD3 which demonstrates the lineage positivity. Now what happens to CD4 and 8? There may be co-expression or there may be loss in ALLs. However, once the cells become mature, then they are either CD4 or they are CD8. Now this is TALL. What we find is CD34 is usually negative. What I am demonstrating are the typical cases of BALL and ALL. TDT is positive, CD3 is positive, CD99 is positive. CD1 is also usually positive. However, CD10 B cell marker negative, PAX5 B cell marker negative, MPO myeloperoxidase negative. So first thing is to exclude, if it is TALL, it should, the B cell markers should be negative, the myeloid markers should be negative, and then the T cell markers should come out to be positive. Then we go on to AML. Now here it is mainly the NOS type, because these are the ones which we diagnose on the basis of cytogenetic abnormalities like PML-RARA or T821 or inversion 16. Now which are the AML, when we are doing for AML, which are the markers we use? Now these are 34, 117, HLA-DR. These are the immaturity markers. CD68 and 163. These are the markers of monocytic differentiation. Suppose we are suspecting M5 or M4. This is to demonstrate and confirm the presence of monocytic markers. 1333 are the myeloid markers. 4161, these are for megakaryoblast. Few cases turn out to megakaryoblast. Then CD42B is also a megakaryocytic marker. CD71 is early erythroid. So that means we are able to pick up pure erythroid leukemia by this marker. Now AML with fibrosis. Now these are the cases in which we find there is leukopenia. Occasional blast cell may or may not be seen, and since there is a marrow fibrosis, blast cells are present but the aspirate is inaspirable. Now which are these cases? It could be any case of AML. It could be AML M7. M7 is almost always associated with marrow fibrosis, therapy related, and then rare entity is panmyelosis with marrow fibrosis. In this also there is extensive marrow fibrosis, few cells in the peripheral blood, and bone marrow does not give a good amount of blast cell count. So what we do is, these are the cases where we go for immunohistochemistry to confirm the diagnosis. M0, you can see the morphology. By and large, there are sheets of blasts which are sort of undifferentiated, and less than 3% of the blasts are Sudan black or MPO positive. However, on immunohistochemistry, you find good number of blasts demonstrate MPO positivity, CD117, CD11. This is the one you find 34 positive, 117 positive, which clinch the diagnosis. 117 presence indicates that we are dealing with a case of AML. Without maturation, again, majority of the cells, M1, are the blast cells. You do myeloperoxidase, and then you find occasional cell is positive, and these are the more than 3% blasts should be MPO Sudan black positive. And this is what you find, CD34, 117, MPO, confirming the diagnosis. M2, here there is maturation. You find myelocytes, promyelocytes, few neutrophils, MPO is positive, even the OR rod is positive. Find azurophilic granules or rods, and then of course you do the markers, and you find 34 positive in few cells, MPO positive, 117 positive. M4 is the one where we talk of monocytic differentiation, which is seen in cases of M4. And the monocytic component should be more than 20%, and there should be monocytes in the peripheral blood more than 5,000. So we can confirm by NSC, and then of course we can do various markers. So now what happens is that the blast cells are CD34 positive, myeloblasts are CD117 positive, the monocytic cells are CD68 positive, and MPO positivity, the maximum of all these is seen with MPO, because the myeloid cells come out positive, pro-monocytes also come out to be weakly positive. So that is the appearance you get in a case of M4. And then we have the monoblastic leukemia, where you have more than 80% are the monoblasts with prominent nuclei, round to oval nuclei. And then we have M5A, the monoblasts which are which are MPO negative but are NSC positive. And finally you have the monocytic, in which the blasts and the pro-monocytes are not 80%, but all of them are less than 80%, more than 20%. You find NSC positive, and then you find that CD68 is positive on immunohistochemistry. M5B, more cells are positive because there are more of pro-monocytes and monocytes on immunohistochemistry. Now M6, now the definition has changed. Earlier we had M6A, M6B. Now we have new classification where there is only one entity, that is a pure erythroid leukemia, where you find that blast cells should be more than 20% and more than 30% should be pro-erythroblasts. Now pro-erythroblasts are to be diagnosed based on the morphology with the rounded nuclei, open chromatin, prominent nuclei. Most of these cells are PS positive. And what you find is not only are they CD71 positive, but some of the cases are also CD117 positive, because CD117 is a myeloid marker, but it is also expressed in proerythroblasts. So these cases demonstrate CD117 positive, confirming that we are dealing with a case of M6. And then finally M7, that is a megakaryoblastic leukemia, where in the marrow or in the peripheral blood you may come across cytoplasmic budding coming from the megakaryoblast. 6141, these are specific and most sensitive markers. Now these are cases associated with marrow fibrosis. Now this is the imprint smear from a case where you find not only the blast cells, but you are also seeing the bizarre promegakaryocytes and megakaryocytes. And these blast cells are, all of them are CD41 or 61 positive. These megakaryoblast are 34 negative, how the angiogenesis is seen, but CD61 positivity confirms that we are dealing with a case of M7. I had left M3, acute promyelocytic leukemia, because this is one entity where on morphology you can make out the diagnosis in majority of the cases, and what you find is multiple OR rods, phago cells, and then this is AML3 variant, where you find bilobed or buttock-shaped nuclei, extensively see the positivity on myeloperoxidase. This is in contrast to monocytic, because sometimes the morphology of this may be confused whether it is M3 variant or that, but then it is the MPO which confirms the diagnosis of these cases. Now this is the CD34, since the blast cells are very, very few, less than 20%, promyelocyte is a neoplastic proliferation, so MPO positive and CD117 positive. Hypoplastic acute leukemia is one where we find that the marrow is like aplastic. If you see the various series, you will find that in adults at times it becomes difficult to differentiate whether we are dealing with a case of aplastic anemia or we are dealing with a case of hypoplastic AML, because the bone marrow aspirate is always inadequate because of the increased amount of fat. However, what we find is that instead of lymphocytes and plasma cells which we find in aplastic anemia, what we find are scattered large cells in clusters which appear blastoid. So unless you do CD34, we may miss this diagnosis. So hypoplastic AML is the one where CD34, like it is something like hypoplastic MDS. You may miss the diagnosis of hypoplastic MDS also if you don't do CD34. So CD34, first thing is that these are blasts. Then of course you confirm with CD117 and MPO that we are dealing with a hypoplastic AML. Nowadays BCL2 is being done in AML cases because it is seen that such cases which are BCL2 positive, they demonstrate a poor response to chemotherapy. What I told you was about the diagnosis. That is the role of immunohistochemistry in diagnosis, especially in cases of pancytopenia and the cases where the aspirate has been inadequate. Now once you have acute leukemia, you give chemotherapy, there is depletion of the leukemic cells, cellularity gets reduced and you get a hemodiluted aspirate. Clinician wants to know whether the patient is in remission or not, though on morphology, because every center is not doing MRD immunophenotyping as of now. So what we have to do is bone marrow biopsy because the aspirate is diluted. So is the patient in remission? Has the regeneration of the hemopoietic elements started? Third thing he wants to know is there any persistence of blast cells or not? See, this is the appearance we get on bone marrow triphyline biopsy post-chemo. What is there is that no blast cells, and the marrow is showing gelatinous marrow transformation. Here also it is all showing gelatinous marrow transformation with few lymphocytes and plasma cells. Now this happens because of chemotherapy. Whatever cells were packing the marrow, they disappear, and that place is taken by gelatinous or acid mucopolysaccharides, what we call as gelatinous marrow transformation. And then you do CD34, it is negative. Now what has happened in this case is the hemopoietic regeneration has started. These are colonies of erythroblasts, then these are clusters of few megakaryocytes, small and large and immature. So then the bone marrow regeneration starts. That is regeneration first of megakaryocytes as well as erythroid precursor starts. So sometimes we do come across hematogones. On morphology you find large and intermediate sized cells, uniform chromatin, nucleoli are usually not well made out, very, very thin rim of cytoplasm, and variable size. So you have to distinguish them from blast cells. Once you distinguish them from blast cells, so post chemotherapy, especially or in ALL cases, you come across the hematogones. Hematogones can be picked up very easily on flow cytometry because of the expression of variable expression of CD34, TDT10, PAX5. Because the hematogones are regenerating normal cells, normal lymphoid cells. So they start with something like lymphoblasts. So the markers like CD34, TDT10 are positive in the initial phases, and then they become mature B cells, and then the CD20 positive comes. Now these are the hematogones, CD34 positive, PAX5 positive, CD10 positive, 20 positive, few cells. See, the number keeps on decreasing, and what you find is that initially you will come across PAX5 and CD10 positivity. We should be aware of the fact that these markers also express in cases of ALL. So based on morphology, and at times we have to take the help of flow cytometry also to distinguish hematogones from persistence of leukemic blasts. Now these are the persistence of post-chemotherapy. You find hemopoietic regeneration has started, these are inferred precursor, but then the clusters of blast cells are also present. So those clusters of blasts you can confirm by doing CD34 and CD10. And then you can do CD117 and other markers to confirm that there is persistence of blasts or not. So what is needed is actually, to summarize, what we find is, first thing is to characterize that the cells are blast cells by TDT, CD3, CD34, PAX5, CD79A. Various markers we use, and depending upon the positivity or negativity, then we go ahead and do further markers like MPO, CD68 to characterize myeloid or myelomonocytic or monocytic acute leukemia. But keep in mind always that there are other entities also, like regenerating hemopoietic cells, especially the lymphoid ones, hematogones, to be distinguished from the persistence of lymphoid blasts. So to summarize, wherever flow cytometry is not possible, the type of acute leukemia can be characterized on immunohistochemistry. Of course, the information which we get from flow cytometry is much more. The aberrant immunophenotypes, the various other markers which are very, very useful for minimal residual disease. It cannot be compared. But since flow is not available for some reason or the other, that is where we can do the immunophenotyping and come to a conclusion whether it is AML or ALL, whether it is BOT, and then it is very, very useful for hypoplastic acute leukemias as well as for assessment of remission status. Thank you very much. These are some of the references. Thanks a lot.
Any questions or comments? Yeah, please.
I must congratulate Dr. Tajinder Singh for such a nice lecture and for writing very good book of the hematology and hematology atlas. We prefer to read his book rather than Wintrow's hematology. I have got two I have got two questions. That bone marrow biopsy, of course, it is nowadays essential for the hematological disorder, but still in many places it is not being done. This is the smear examination which is being done, and from that we can make only 8 to 10 smears. And so can we, apart from the myelofibrosis, myelofibrosis and hypoplastic anemia, can we use the peripheral blood also for immunocytochemistry?
It is difficult, especially in cases of subleukemic and aleukemic leukemia. And such cases are not few. If you ask the clinician, you will find about 10 to 15% of the cases they come across cytopenias where we don't know what is the cause. So these are the cases in which, while doing aspirate, I think there is no harm in doing the biopsy at the same time, because we don't know what we are going to get, whether it is going to be aplastic anemia, whether it is going to be hypoplastic acute leukemia, is it going to be a multiple myeloma with marrow fibrosis, is it going to be a marrow necrosis or not. So it is always useful, those who are not doing, they better do it.
May I just say one thing in response to this? It's kind of serendipitous because we started flow a bit late in our institute. So we were dependent a lot on immunocytochemistry. Immunocytochemistry, what we, in our observation, was better, it cannot replace flow without a shadow of doubt, was better on the imprint smear than on the aspirate smear. The aspirate smear, because of its dilution and the amount of blood that is there, our results of immunocytochemistry was always better on the trephine imprint that we used to make. So that's one comment. So trephine biopsy is, has its role in that way also. So rather than just an aspirate, if you combine an aspirate with trephine, the trephine imprint can be used for all your immunocytochemical stains.
question is that for diagnosis of biphenotypic leukemia, the percentage of both the blasts should be more than 20%, or because in flow cytometry many times we find the aberrant expression. So for biphenotypic leukemia, for example, for lymphocytic, both the B cell and T cell should be more than 20%, or
See, immunohistochemistry, we don't diagnose biphenotypic leukemia. Depending upon the expression of various markers, we diagnose either as AML or ALL. Regarding the biphenotypic, it could be same blast cell which may express B and myeloid marker, which may express T and myeloid markers. Or there may be two different populations of blast cells. One may be expressing the myeloid markers, the other may be expressing the lymphoid markers. See, the number should be more than 20% blast cells.
There is an impulse course.
Coming to your first point, that in a setting of pancytopenia, we do the both. I think I agree with Dr. Rajendra that we should go for the both aspiration and biopsy and keep the sample ready, because keep the sample preserved both in heparin, EDTA and others, so that depending on finding whether you are dealing with hypoplastic anemia, acute leukemia, whether they need cytogenetics, peak cytogenetics, molecular macros, accordingly you can go for the investigations. Because again, asking the patient for a second sitting is very, very difficult. And secondly, I agree with this over biphenotyping leukemia is now a increasingly recognized entity, which even the clinicians has also put an importance also. We have WHO criteria also. It has been clearly defined how to diagnose biphenotypic leukemia, even T myeloid, B myeloid. It has been well characterized by the WHO, and the management efforts also. Suppose if you are dealing with a biphenotypic leukemia in a pediatric patients, you give a more of like of a pediatric LL type of the chemotherapy. Whereas in adult, if you are dealing with a biphenotype leukemia, you can go for a more type of a myeloid leukemia. If you are going for a biphenotypic leukemia, you are given a AML type of the protocol, you find still persistence of the blast cells with the lymphoid markers. Then you can give some dose of the high dose methotrexate to clear that blast cells expressing that lymphoid markers also. So that is how the clinician, it has a relevance to know the biphenotype leukemia.
So, any comments? Yes.
When we suspect hypoplastic AML on bone marrow aspiration?
Difficult.
On bone marrow aspirate, we may come across, because it is a cellularity is too low. It is very, very low. It is less than 20% cellularity. So the smears are hypocellular, very, very paucicellular, but you may come across an occasional blast cell here and there. The very presence of blast cell in hypocellular marrow is highly suggestive of hypoplastic acute leukemia, because in aplastic anemia we don't come across any blast cell at all. So that gives an idea that we are dealing with hypoplastic AML.
Just one more comment, sir. On your post-remission marrows, what we have found useful is to identify the erythroid lineage, the blast lineage, and the regenerating myeloid, a combination of E-cadherin. E-cadherin is a good stain when you are confused between whether it's an erythroblast that I am looking at, or a regenerating myeloblast, or a leukemic blast. So we usually use E-cadherin for the erythroid lineage. It comes out beautifully, along with the myeloid or the lymphoid lineage markers if you have to do it on a trifine biopsy.
Okay.
So an erythroid marker helps us out really well. If not, then we will close the session, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir, for the wonderful talk. Before we take a break for tea, I would like to draw your attention to the forthcoming events being held in the Department of Pathology. A CME on in vivo and ex vivo microscopy techniques by international guest speaker Dr. Manu Jain will be held on 13th March 2020. The 4th National Hematology Conference will also be held on the 20th of February 2021 on the theme of bleeding and coagulation disorders. Registration forms are available with your kit, and the registration counters are now open for registration. The certificates of this conference will be available after 5 p.m. and we will start our PG quiz at 11 a.m. sharp. So now we can take a break for 30 minutes for tea and then convene at 11 a.m. for PG quiz.